Friday afternoon, Washington, D.C., Venus Williams and Alex Eala are standing on the same practice court, running drills, trading shots, exactly like they did 5 weeks earlier in Germany. The tournament films it, the tournament posts it, and on the official site, the doubles draw still lists them as a team. 24 hours later, that draw is published for real. Alex Eala's name is gone. Standing next to Venus Williams instead is Diana Schneider. No statement, no withdrawal notice, no explanation from anyone. Draws change all the time in this sport. Partners swap, players pull out, nobody blinked. But this one moved differently, and you could tell by who noticed first. Ben Rothenberg, one of the most connected reporters in women's tennis, posted publicly that he was looking at Venus Williams paired with someone other than her pre-announced partner, and that he genuinely did not know why. A reporter with sources across the entire tour looked at this and said out loud that it didn't add up. 2 days later, Venus Williams sat down for her pre-tournament press conference. Someone asked her directly why she was no longer playing doubles with Alex Eala. Her answer was 4 sentences long. They'd had a great time at Bad Homburg. It didn't work out this time. She'd love for there to be future times. We'll see what happens. That's the whole answer. And within hours, the internet had decided what it meant. Tension. A falling out. Someone got dropped. People read coldness into 4 sentences that, on a second listen, don't actually contain any. So let's do this properly. Let's walk the timeline hour by hour, because when you line it up next to everything else that was happening in Alex Eala's season, the popular theories don't survive contact with the calendar. And by the end, those 4 sentences from Venus Williams are going to sound very different than they did the first time you heard them. To understand why this split registered as news at all, you have to understand what the partnership meant in the first place. On one side of the net, a 46-year-old with 7 Grand Slam singles titles. On the other, a 21-year-old who 3 weeks earlier had knocked the defending champion out of Wimbledon. If you've only tuned into women's tennis this summer, Alex Eala is worth introducing properly. She's from the Philippines, left-handed, 21 years old, and currently ranked 29 in the world, 1 spot below the career high of 28 she set earlier this month. But the ranking isn't the headline. This is, at Wimbledon, in the 3rd round, Eala beat defending champion Jasmine Paolini's conqueror from the previous rounds and reached the 4th round, straight set 7-5 in a tiebreak and 6-2. In doing so, she became the first player from the Philippines in the entire Open era to reach the 2nd week of a Grand Slam, not the first woman, the first player, full stop, from a country of 110 million people. When she flew home, the president of the Philippines held a reception for her at the presidential palace and handed her a citation, telling her on camera that he was, in his words, gushing. That's the scale of attention Eala was carrying into the summer. Now, Venus Williams. Here's a detail that got buried in most of the coverage of this story, and it changes how the whole thing feels. The last singles match Venus Williams won was exactly 1 year earlier at the 2025 Washington Open, a straight sets win over Peyton Stearns before a loss to Magdalena Frech the following round. Since that week, she'd gone 11 straight singles matches without a win. So when Venus arrives back in Washington in the summer of 2026, she isn't walking into just another stop on the calendar. She's walking back into the last place that gave her something good. That's the emotional weight underneath all of this, whether she says it out loud or not, which is why the doubles pairing mattered in the first place. This wasn't a photo opportunity. Back in June, at the Bad Homburg Open in Germany, Venus Williams and Alex Eala actually played doubles together, walked out as a team, not posed for a poster. They beat their first-round opponents in straight sets, then reached the quarterfinals, where they lost to Teresa Mihalkov and Olivia Nichols, 2 genuine doubles specialists. 1 tournament, 2 matches, and people fell for it anyway, because of what it represented. A legend who spent her career kicking down doors that were never built to open for her, standing across the net from a 21-year-old, currently kicking one down for an entire nation that had never had a player reach this level. 2 generations of the same story in the same service box. They were set to do it again in Washington. Wildcard into the draw, confirmed, practiced together on Friday, filmed and posted. And then gone. So what actually happened in those 20 24 hours. Let's lay the timeline next to the fact, because that's exactly where the popular explanations stop making sense. The dates don't line up the way a planned decision would. Friday, the tournament is promoting the Eala-Williams pairing with practice footage. Saturday, the draw drops without Eala in it, and yet the tournament's own homepage kept listing the pairing even after the draw contradicted it. That's not how a planned withdrawal looks. A planned withdrawal gets a quiet, coordinated update across every channel at once. This looked like something decided far. Venus Williams did not withdraw. This detail matters more than it first appears. If the issue had been on Venus's side fatigue, her body telling her that 46 years old playing singles and doubles in July heat was one commitment too many, then both names disappear from the doubles draw entirely. That's not what happened. Venus stayed in, repaired with Diana Schneider, and given a real first-round match. She is competing in doubles this week. She simply isn't competing with Alex Eala, which tells us something concrete. Whichever way this decision went, it came from one side, not two. It doesn't tell us why, it just makes the silence around it louder. It doesn't look like an injury either. That was the reasonable first guess, and it's where most coverage landed. Except Eala didn't withdraw from singles, and she didn't draw a soft first-round match to ease into the week. Her first-round opponent is Qinwen Zheng, the reigning Olympic gold medalist from Paris 2024, the first Asian player ever to win that singles title. A former Australian Open finalist with 5 TAR titles and a career-high ranking of world no. 4. Zheng is only outside the top 100 right now because she's been rebuilding since elbow surgery in February, and she's in this draw on a wild card. Every preview flagged Eala Zheng as a must-watch first-round match, and there's history behind it. At the 2023 Asian Games semi-final, Zheng beat Eala in 3 sets, then went on to win gold in Paris. This is their first meeting on the Buta Tour, and it's happening in round 1. You don't skip doubles because your body is breaking down and then walk straight into a 3-set war against an Olympic champion who has already beaten you once. That isn't injury behavior. And then there's the silence itself. No reason from the tournament. No reason from Eala's camp. 4 polite sentences from Venus that, taken at face value, explain nothing. 3 separate parties, none of whom share a publicist, all choosing to say nothing. Coordinated silence like that usually means one of 2 things. The reason is boring enough that nobody thought it needed announcing, or it's sensitive enough that everyone quietly agreed it wasn't theirs to explain. Injury doesn't fit. A falling out doesn't fit. People who are angry with each other don't publicly say they'd love to play together again. Venus pulling the plug doesn't fit, because Venus is still in the doubles draw this week. Every clean explanation collapses. So here's a different question, one that doesn't ask what happened between Venus and Alex, but what happened to Alex somewhere in the 4 weeks between Bad Homburg and Washington. To be upfront about what this is, neither Eala nor the tournament has given an official reason. What follows is a reading of the public evidence and the calendar, not a leak, not a confirmed report. You're welcome to check it against the dates yourself. Here's the assumption worth questioning. Back in June, being invited to play doubles with Venus Williams was, without question, a gift. At Bad Homburg, Alex Eala was a talented young player who had never reached the second week of a major, sitting outside the top 30, coming off an upset win over Elena Rybakina in Berlin. For a player in that position, sharing a court with a 7-time Grand Slam champion is pure upside. Extra matches, extra hours on grass, a masterclass in every practice session, attention she hadn't had to build entirely on her own. There's no version of that invitation you turn down. Now look at who arrived in Washington 5 weeks later, ranked 29 in the world, a win over the defending Wimbledon champion, a 4th-round Grand Slam run, a reception at the Presidential Palace, the highest-ranked Filipino player in WTA history, and standing at the front end of the single most brutal stretch on the calendar. Washington, then Toronto, then Cincinnati, then the US Open. 4 events, 5 weeks, hard courts back-to-back in the height of summer, which punish the body in a way grass and clay simply don't. Same invitation, completely different player. Doubles for the Alex Eala of June was an opportunity. For the Alex Eala of late July, it may have quietly become a cost. The schedule itself backs this up without needing any inside information. The DC Open runs July 27 to August 2. The National Bank Open in Toronto begins August 2, the very same day. If Eala were to go deep in Washington, she could, in theory, be playing a match on one continent's tournament as the next one is already underway elsewhere. Cincinnati follows immediately after that, overlapping the back end of Toronto. Then the US Open. This isn't just a hard schedule. Every tour schedule is demanding. This is a 5-week block of consecutive hardcourt events stacked directly on top of each other and a doubles draw sitting on top of the first week of it. There's also the ranking map. Across this entire North American hardcourt swing, Eala has only 70 ranking points to defend 60 from last year's US Open second round and 10 already locked in from a first-round bye in Toronto, which means almost every singles match she plays over these 5 weeks is pure upside, nothing bleeds away if she loses early, and every win moves her up, which in turn shapes her seeding at the US Open and who she meets in the second week. Doubles adds nothing to that equation. No ranking points toward it, no effect on seeding. The risk to her body is real. The reward, in the terms that matter for August and September, is close to zero, and her own behavior in the singles drawbacks this reading up rather than contradicting it. A player managing an actual injury protects the whole week, pulls back from everything. Eala didn't do that. She kept the hardest possible first-round singles match on the entire draw. That's not what protecting a fragile body looks like. That's what protecting priorities looks like. Cut the thing that doesn't move the needle, keep the thing that does. Which brings us back to Venus Williams' 4 sentences, heard again with that context sitting underneath. It didn't work out this time, not a blanket, it's over. A specific occasion, quarantined to this 1 week. Future times, not a door left ajar out of politeness. A door actively propped open. We'll see what happens, the words of someone who knows the reason and has decided, deliberately, that it isn't hers to hand over. Venus Williams has been fielding press questions since the 1990s. She knows exactly what headline gets written if she says, out loud, that a 21-year-old is managing her own workload ahead of the US Open, and she knows that headline lands on Eala, not on her. So she said nothing, and she said it carefully. If there's a piece of this that's easy to miss, it's this. This may be the first time in Alex Eala's professional career that she's had to say no to an opportunity rather than say yes to one. That sounds small. It isn't. A player ranked 60 takes every wildcard, every exhibition, every doubles invitation, because scarcity makes all of it valuable. You build a career by saying yes. A player ranked 29 with a US Open seeding on the line has the opposite problem. The skill isn't how much can I take on anymore, it's learning what to let go of. That's a different job entirely, and most players learn it the hard way in August on hard court, after saying yes to one commitment too many. So did Venus Williams and Alex Eala fall out? Almost certainly not. What actually happened looks quieter than that and more interesting, a 21-year-old standing at the start of the 5 most important weeks of her career so far, learning to behave like a top 30 player instead of a player still chasing the label, and a 46-year-old who has lived that exact moment more than once in her own career and was gracious enough not to explain it for her in front of a room full of cameras. This reading is testable, which is what makes it worth watching rather than just hearing about. If it holds, Eala skips the doubles draw in Toronto. She skips it in Cincinnati too. She plays singles, protects her body, chases her seeding, and arrives in New York with a ranking that changes who she can and can't run into in the first week. If it doesn't hold, and she signs up for doubles again next week, that's worth knowing too. 3 weeks ago, Alex Eala stood in Malakang Palace being handed a presidential citation, told that 110 million people were behind her. That was the celebration. This is the other side of the same story, the part nobody holds a reception for. It's what it looks like when the tour starts asking more of you than you actually have to give, and you have to learn in real time what to say no to. There's one thread still hanging, and it's worth sitting with. Venus didn't say maybe, she said future time. The US Open is in New York in about 5 weeks. It's the building where Venus Williams has played some of the best tennis of her life, and the building where Alex Eala's own breakthrough run happened. If that door opens again, that's almost certainly where it happens. We'll be watching the doubles entry lists in Toronto and Cincinnati the moment they drop, because that's where this theory either holds up or falls apart, and either way, it's worth coming back.